Hi, welcome to the Gamesplainer. I'm Jeff the Gamesplainer and today I'm Gamesplaining August. Yes, that's right, it's the time for the top 10 of games I played in August. Once again, it's been quite a narrow list, but there's been a little bit of give and take within my plays, so let's have a look at it. So, straight away, my number 10 for August is Aftershock. Now, Aftershock is a game by Alan Moon, who is famous for Ticket to Ride and that type of game, and it holds that kind of weight, but there's a little bit more going on. I fear that the issue with Aftershock is that you kind of need to have played through a round of the game to understand how the game runs, and that's how I presented it when I played it. I quite enjoyed it. It's fun. It moves forward. The whole idea of I'm putting guys or meeples into a location, but I've got to pay to put them into a location, and I've got to pay to do this, and I've got to pay to do this, and it's basically everything's off cards, and you've got to buy those cards, but you've only got so much money. It's a closed economy going on, and so there's only so much money that's floating around. But when I'm paying, quite often some of the money I'm paying is to another player, and they can then use that money to pay another player, and so we can keep getting extra cards that we didn't think we were going to be able to. Building bridges and doing a whole bunch of stuff. You can watch my gameplay to get a feel for the actual game, but I've found that the actual playing of it is, once you get to the second or third round, depending on how many players you have, it makes more sense and plays really simply, but actually getting to that point is a little bit tricky. Let's move on. My number 9 game for August is City of Gears. Now, this is a lighter style game that finishes really abruptly, and it doesn't necessarily need to, but it generally does. The whole idea is that you've got your own little factory and you're kind of exploring out from that point, and once all the factory tiles, so there's 9 of them, are flipped over, you're putting these 4 white tokens into the bag. And when 3 of those have been pulled out, that's the end of the game. Whenever that third one gets pulled out, that's the end of the game. You get to do no more. And that way of finishing it, I like the randomness on it, but it feels really abrupt because it's possible for that to happen really quickly or to happen really far down the line. And what ends up happening is it's really hard for you to then build towards something because the something may never come. That's my only issue with the game. I actually enjoy playing the whole push and pull of moving you guys around and all that type of stuff. And the dice rolling, and it's all good. It all plays really nicely, except the end's a little bit abrupt for my personal liking. Let's keep moving forward. My number 8 game is Captain Sonar. Now, this is a game that I did not expect to have in my top 10 lists, especially not to have it further than number 10. I'm not a huge fan of Captain Sonar, but the game I had of it, I really enjoyed. There was a real something different at the table, I think, that kind of it changed how the game played. I've had in previous games of it where it just hasn't been fun, and I fear it's because of the people that are playing the game rather than the game itself, to make it fun or not fun. So it's very dependent on having that grouping. I personally much prefer to play with 8 players than any other number. It is built as an 8-player game, let's be honest about it. If you've got less than the 8 players, they're having to do multiple roles, which gets a little bit iffy in terms of actually getting stuff done and the speed at which things can move through. But I really enjoyed the first time. We actually played it twice the other night. I really enjoyed the first play. The second play finished so quickly that one of the teams was just really obvious where they were and they got exploded a couple of times, and that's game. And that's kind of the part and parcel with this game, where it's going to go quick or it's going to go slow. My number 7 game is Papillon. Now, Papillon is a very interesting game because you're trying to get the size of fields of a certain colour up, but you only really need to have 2 of them up to there as big as you can possibly get them. Everything else beyond that is just almost wasted time. You go for the smaller fields and close them off so that you can get more butterflies onto the particular plants. And there's a real push-pull on it. I've played this two-player, I've played this with more than 2 players. I've found that the two-player game, while it's okay, isn't anywhere near as good as the multiple-player version. Simply because the multiple-player version, there's a bidding system that is included. On the two-player, not so much. You don't get to bid, you just kind of go. There's a lot of thinking and choices, and you really do need to go first, because by going first, you can get 4 tiles, whereas if you're going last, you're probably only going to get 2 tiles. And so the ability to get the appropriate tiles and the appropriate number of them, and there's hidden scoring things, or not really hidden, but the number of butterflies that are in a closed off field at the end of the game is going to get you points, but you've got to close the field to be able to get those points. All the little stuff that's going on, and let's be honest, Papillon is just beautiful on the table. If you don't know what I'm talking about, go and watch my Gamesplay and get a look at it, because it's got these 3-dimensional bushes that are getting little butterfly pegs onto them, and that's how we score, and whoever has the most pegs on each of those things gets there's so much good stuff going with it. I really suggest heavily have a look at Papillon. My number 6 game is Mariposa. Now, Mariposa is getting the video done this weekend as well. If you have watched that video, you may be looking at it going, I didn't think you really liked it. That's not true. I do like it. I do like Mariposa. I fear that it's not going to get played often, simply because of the difficulty and the barriers of getting people to the table. But the actual playing of it from a personal perspective, I really didn't mind it. It moves through comfortably because I understand what I'm doing. But as I say, I fear that other players are not going to understand. It's going to be really tiresome to actually get a game through to then get them to play it again. And that's really where the issue comes in with this game. I like it. You're just moving around a track very similar to Great Western Trail. You're moving along a path. You can move up to 7 things. There's a lot of choice there. And yeah, and I kind of like that. It's just kind of open to, this is what you're going to do. Once you get into the campaign system, it puts a whole bunch more stuff out that will enable you to move to other things, and it has that build up that the game really requires. My number 5 game is Plunderbund. I really enjoyed playing Plunderbund on the couple of times that I've played it. The idea behind it is a deck building game, but you're only building it by a few cards within the entire game, and it pushes you in a certain direction with the cards that you bring in. But the whole thing is, you have a choice to use the card or not use the card. If you use the card, it's going to cost you some stuff, which means you're going to get some junk into your deck that will need to be removed next turn round or when they come out. But if you're putting 5 cards in front of you and 3 of them are junk cards, you only have 2 cards in front of you. I haven't seen this mechanism played this way before. I really appreciate that. I really like that way of playing. There's a whole bunch of tracks that you try to push up and be higher on those tracks, and where you are on those tracks tells you if you're going to win this location or that location, because things come out of a bag that's kind of, that goes to number 14, that goes to number 14. And it might be the colour of this track, and whoever's the highest on this track is going to be the winner. But if they're not there, the next person down. There's a lot of thinking going on with it. And it really comes down to get as many guys onto the board as you possibly can in order to move through that quicker. There's a whole idea of whoever's the furthest forward, and it suggests that you're not spending or putting the cards into your deck to be able to move forward on some tracks, so that you can get through and move forward on other tracks faster. There might be something to that. I haven't played that way. I much prefer to play all 4. I don't know what that looks like if you actually do play it that way, and I'll have to try it that way, I know. But I'll leave it there. If you have any thoughts about that or want to add into that, please write below. Any comments or suggestions for, this is what happens when you just go after this one track, or just after these 2 tracks and ignore the other ones. There's a real push-pull on that. My number 4 game is Brass Lancashire. Now, that may surprise you a lot. Brass has tended to be my number 1 or number 2 game in these lists every time it's come up. But that's Brass Birmingham. I had a game of Brass Lancashire with a game of Brass Birmingham going across the table because we had a table of 8 people. So we actually played 2 games of relatively the same game. I haven't played Lancashire for a while, and I realised that I much prefer Birmingham, like infinitely prefer Birmingham. It's simply because of the way you get coal. So if you haven't seen any of the brass stuff or you don't know what I'm talking about, please go and watch my gameplay of both the brasses so you can get an idea of the game. But there's coal and there's ore, the resources that you need. To get coal, you need to be connected to something that is offshore or out of area. In Lancashire, you're able to put a anchor, I believe it is, onto the board, and that joins you to the offshore. So suddenly you're able to get coal. In Birmingham, you have to actually get a connection to one of the sides of the board to be able to do the thing. There's so much more going on, so much more thinking happening in Birmingham than there is in Lancashire, that I found that Lancashire was like, that's really easy. And I got around the board relatively easily without having to worry about stuff being able to happen or not happen, which is generally my concern in Birmingham. In fact, I think with this play of Lancashire that I managed to get through the first half of the game. So there's 2 ages in the game. I managed to get through that first age without a positive income on my board, just building stuff up. So in the last turn on that age, I was able to turn over a heap of stuff, which shot my income up, but it saved me a whole bunch of turns because I could do it all on one turn. I think that's really lovely, but in Birmingham, I haven't been able to do it quite as immensely as I was able to do in Lancashire because of the tightness of it. My number 3 game is Rugusa. I really like Rugusa. I think it's such a wonderful idea of a game. You are only placing a house and getting what is in the 3 hexes that are intersecting with where that house is, but that means that there are 6 different things that are able to be collected in terms of resource, and then there's a city, and each of the things within the city does something slightly different, and so you use it and you do the thing. But here's the beautiful part of this game is, in the city, if someone else uses that hex where you currently have a guy edging on it, you also get to do that thing again. If you have 2 houses on it, you get to do it again twice. And just there's a real build up on it where you kind of, the first few rounds, you're kind of just placing stuff out and going, oh yeah, okay, I'll do that once. But then by the end of the game, you're getting stuff on other people's turns, and there's a whole bunch more going on than you would expect. I think that in one of the games I played, the wall was maybe less than halfway there, and then the last couple of turns, just people went into that spot, and that enabled the wall to be totally finished. I really appreciate that. I really like the build up on it and the push-pull. And there's this constant, I need the length of wall because there's extra points on your longest area of wall at the end of the game. So you're looking for, I need to join those bits of wall up and I need to put my things in so that someone else doesn't stop me from going forward. Or that person's got too much wall. I need to put a thing there so they can't go there anymore. And on top of that is the fish. My goodness, the fish. It feels like when you take a fish action that it's just a throwaway action. It's like, I'll go on the edge. Okay, so I can create 2 fish. Great. Or I can create 1 fish. That's really great. But there's an area that enables you to turn those fish into points. 1 point for every 2 fish that you have. But you go there a second time, both of those are getting a point for every 2 fish you have. So by the time you go there a second time, if you've got 6 fish, you're getting 3 points from one of the houses, 3 points from the other house. You go there, you see how it builds up, and there can be a whole bunch of points on that one spot if that's what you're working towards, if that's what you're going after. There's so much going on with that. I think it's a really worthwhile game to look into. Let's keep moving. My number 2 game is It's a Wonderful World. This game has been on my lists for quite a number of times, and I really like it. I think it plays so elegantly, so easily on the table. There are 4 rounds total, and it just goes. And there's so little to understand to do it, but to win it is so hard. Oh my goodness, there's so much going on. A lot of it is in the luck of your choice of the cards and the cards that you get to choose from. A lot of it is how you manipulate those cards to enable you to build. I really appreciate it. I've only won the game once. I don't know how many times I've played it, but I've only won it once. And I've just got to assume that that one win was just because I had the right cards come into my hand to enable me to build up towards something. And that's really the key to Rugusa, is just which cards you're choosing to use. And there's such a crunch on it. And it's as I say, it's only 4 rounds, which means it's a relatively short game, but it's so crunchy that I just really like it. Let's move on. My number 1 game for August is City of the Big Shoulders. City of the Big Shoulders is a game that I realized was extraordinarily good when I first learnt it. And as I was playing towards doing a video of it, I just found something in there that just felt right. It's not a really dense game in terms of there's a heap of stuff to do, but there's a lot of stuff that needs to be done within the, I can only do a few things. So worker placement, so you're placing your guys, but you've only got very, very limited number of workers. And so it's about getting the manipulation of those workers to enable you to build big. It is, as far as I'm aware, it is a Euro version of an 18xx game. I haven't played any 18xx, so I'm not 100% sure, but it's stock manipulation, and you can own bits of stock of other people, and they can own bits of your stock. And there's a real mathiness to the game, but my non-mathy wife actually really appreciates it too, really enjoys the game as well. I just really like it. I think this is such a wonderful, wonderful game that it takes elements that you don't really expect to see, and they just work. It works really cleanly, and it's really obvious what's going on. And the rule set isn't so dense that you if I do this, I've got to do this and this and this and this. It's just, I'll do this, and that's what happens. I'll do this, and that's what happens. And it makes sense. And that's probably the best way to say it. It just makes sense. So City of the Big Shoulders is my number 1 game for August. I will leave it there. If you have any comments or suggestions, please write them below. If you have any games that you would like to be gamesplained, please shoot me an email to thegamesplainer@gmail.com. Follow me on Instagram and Twitter @thegamesplainer to keep up to date with the games that I'm playing. Subscribe to my videos to keep up to date with the games that I'm gamesplaining. And until next time, enjoy gaming.